What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers. If you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about the best way to attract deer and hold them on your property during the daylight. Now, the reason why I'm putting out this video is one or several of my videos that are doing very well through the gun deer season had to do with how to get deer on your property during daylight hours. I went back and I watched those videos. They're a few years old, so I don't remember everything that I said in them. There are a few things I missed, so I want to add to it. So if you found my channel while those videos were blowing up, welcome. I want to elaborate a little bit more and add a few things to those videos. If you're watching this video brand new, haven't seen those other ones, go check them out. It's going to add to everything I have to say here as well. So the first thing that we need to keep in mind if we have deer that are coming onto our property while it is not daylight out, there are two reasons for that. The first reason is a situation where you had a buck who was coming onto your property during the daylight and then all of a sudden he's only showing up in the dark. Now what happened in that situation is somebody spooked that deer or something spooked that deer. So it could have been you. You're putting additional pressure on your property when you're hunting it. You're coming on, you're putting scent out there, you're putting noise out there. He saw you, heard you, or smelled you. He decided it's not safe to go over there during the daylight anymore, but he'll still come back and check it out at night to see if things have settled down or not yet. If he still smells you in that area with some lingering scent or whatever, sees some things that are maybe out of the ordinary, he's not going to come back for a while. So that might be the situation. You may not have been the one that spooked him either. Maybe he's coming from a mile away, and some other hunter is over there putting sight, sound, and smell into the woods, and he didn't like that, and he's kind of had to take a roundabout way to get back over to you in order to avoid whatever he's avoiding over there. It could also be predators moving through an area. I have watched from the stand as two coyotes have come out and messed around with a doe and her fawns. It has scattered them all over the place. I had them, that specific doe and fawns, coming into a food source every single PM. You could have set your clock to it, and as soon as those predators pushed them off, they were gone for a while before they finally started getting back into what was their rhythmic movement of coming in at that specific time of day. Now, had I not seen that, I would have wondered what happened. Did I mess up? Did I whatever? But no, it was because they got chased around by some coyotes. Who knows? Maybe chased a mile away, or just in their mind, that area wasn't safe anymore because there were coyotes there. So bye-bye, and they go off somewhere else. So the other thing, the second thing I want to bring up is if you have a buck that is only coming in during the nighttime on your camera and you want to get him to be a daylight buck on your camera, that's what the rest of this video is going to be about. So that first part is just hunt better, try to eliminate your sight, scent, and sound in the woods, sneak in, sneak out, make sure you're conscious of where your wind's blowing, not just while on stand, but while you're getting in and out. Make sure you're conscious of those sight lines. I like to kind of get down, if you have topography to play with, go down into a low area and then come back up onto that higher area to hunt, where you can see more or see down into an attraction on the other side of that next hill. Those are great ways to not blast out your woods when you're walking in and out of there. So this next chunk, though, is how to turn that nighttime buck into a daytime buck. And this is going to take a lot more work because you're going to have to create the habitat that attracts him and holds him on your property during daylight hours. So if you're seeing this buck in the middle of the night, midnight, 1 a.m., this buck is living a long ways away from you. If it is taking him till the very middle of the night to get to you, you are on the very edge of his range. You are not his home range. So you are going to have to create a situation that's better than everything from where he is over there to where you are over here, which is a lot more difficult. So I tend to just kind of see those bucks that show up at midnight, 1 a.m. as like, oh, it's nice to see you're in the area. My best shot at you is going to be if you're wandering around during the daylight during the rut. You have a much better chance at attracting those bucks that are showing up an hour after dark, 2 hours after dark, an hour before light, 2 hours before light, because they're already a lot closer to you. You are in the more center area of their home range. You're not on the outskirts. So the idea that he's going to just up and move that midnight buck all the way to the edge of his range and recreate that area over there as his range is not as likely as you're going to get that buck whose home range is maybe here and getting him to shift over just a little bit. So again, just get your cams out there and kind of have realistic expectations of what you're going to get out of your deer herd. Don't try to pull that midnight buck, pull that hour after dark buck. And the other thing is, how many times are you seeing this buck? Is he coming through every single night, an hour after dark? Great, you're going to have a great shot at bringing him in with some better habitat, or just as the habitat changes throughout the season. We'll talk about that a little bit more later too. But that buck that is only coming through once a month, you only get one picture of him throughout the entire season. Again, not a buck that needs to be on your list or anything. That buck is just a random passerby. That buck lived somewhere else and he came through your area on vacation one time. The chances of getting him there again, not likely, even if you improve the habitat, because you're going to need him to do that random walkthrough again so that he knows you even improved it. And then again, you're trying to get him to move from out of state over here to in state here. A lot of people like to visit places, but they don't like to move there, and that's what that buck is. So make sure you're focused on those bucks that are a lot closer to your daylight hours, even if they are during the dark. We'll bring them in with higher quality habitat, and of course those bucks that are more consistent. They're coming through every night, a couple times a week, not that once a month, once a season guy. Just forget about him. It's nice that he's on there, but we're going to focus on these more consistent bucks that are actually in your area. So how we actually do this is through cover and food, not just any cover and food. Like I said, it's going to change as it goes through the season. We need to be focused on the fall during the hunting season. Having the best available food source in the spring is great. If you're in an area where there's a lot of winter kill, you'll get your deer herd out of the winter and into the spring and give them a full belly right away. But that's not going to do much for you for deer season other than keeping your deer numbers healthy in an area where there's a lot of winter kill. Same thing with summer food. You don't want summer food because that does not translate into fall food. If I was putting summer food in my food plots, that's going to mean that I am going to have a deteriorating food source as I head into the fall. And I want it to be an improving food source as I head into the fall, because this is the deer season. We need to focus on having good cover and good food during the chunk of the year that we can hunt. And how we do that is, like I said, by planting, if we're planting food plots, planting later in the season. Those seeds are going to hit the ground in like August. You don't want to plant in the spring when the farmers are planting, because what happens is that food grows as we head into fall. You're not trying to harvest the crop, so it doesn't have to get to maturity. You don't want it to get to maturity. The deer love the taste of it when it's still young and tender, not when it's that old, stemmy, dried out version of itself that the farmer has in his field that time of year. That's what's going to pull those deer out of that farmer's field, which is old, dried out, stemmy, hard, and into your lush green food plot in the fall. That's what makes this the high level food source in the fall. Now you also need cover, so you can't just put a food plot out in this big wide open plowed field and expect the deer to go hit it up. They will, but in the middle of the night, and we're trying to avoid that in this video, remember. So what you want to do is make sure there is thick cover around your food plot. I have switchgrass planted around mine. That is a thick grass that stands 6 to 8 to 12 feet tall. It gets more wispy at the top, but there's a solid visual barrier at least up to 6 feet that nothing can see through, and it stands up to even heavy snowfalls. So that is a good thing to plant around your food plots. Now up north in northwestern Wisconsin, I have just thick cover around the food sources. I just let the sunlight down. The sunlight makes every little twig shoot up and grow and create thick cover around the edges of the food plot. That's just a good thing you need. These deer will not come onto a food source if it doesn't have cover around it. The reason being is they do feel vulnerable. They're used to being in the thickest chunk of the woods. They don't want to come stand out on a wide open food plot to eat without some at least adjacent cover around it. You're also going to want to create those bedding areas. Now, when you create bedding areas, you do that by thickening up a part of the woods, because deer need browse in their bedding areas. They will eat those middle of the day meals on just twigs and stems and whatever in those bedding areas. So again, if you're in big woods, get that high canopy down, let the forest floor spring up with regenerative growth. That will turn into a bedding area. Now, the other thing you can do if you're in like a more marshy area that's already kind of open is you want to try to start putting in those like red osier dogwood plugs if it's wet enough to do that. I have videos on how to clone red osier dogwood if you guys want to go look those up on my channel. But essentially you can just cut clones off an existing red osier dogwood and just plug them into the mud, and you're probably get about 50% success rate on those, but that will eventually over time create this real thick area of the woods. Ideally you'll want that to be in a more dry area. Deer's not going to bed down in a puddle, but if you can put the red osier dogwood where it's going to have some wet feet, but there's maybe a little high point for the deer to actually bed on, but they're still in that inclusive cover, that's what you're looking for in that situation. Anywhere where you can make a chunk of the woods thicker is going to help out your property. Now, the other thing with that is that you want to make sure that this is pocketed. I don't like the idea of just like, this is our bedding area. I like the idea of there's like a little thick pocket over there, there's one over there, there's one back there, there's one over here, but in this overall bedding area. And the reason for that is all of the deer family groups don't necessarily like to bed down next to each other, especially those bigger bucks. They're going to kind of want their own little secluded area off to the side. They'll be adjacent and they'll relate to the rest of the deer herd, but they don't want to necessarily be right on top of them. Imagine it's like an old guy wants to go sit off in the den and watch football at Thanksgiving instead of hanging out with the family in the kitchen or whatever. He kind of wants that old buck wants his like little den or his man cave to go off and hang out in. So you got to make sure that there's like different compartments or different little pockets of bedding on your property. That's going to be a great way to make sure that that big buck that you have coming on your camera at night comes over here and goes, wow, this is a lot nicer bedding area than where I'm coming from. And this food source, man, in the fall especially, maybe he does go and continue to live over there during the summer, but in the fall, when this food plot starts popping, he goes, I'm a bed here and I'm going to eat on this food source here. And now that buck that was coming in at night is going to now start showing up during the daylight. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.